Our next conversation is with Peter Yu, a finance and marketing executive who is running for Colorado's 4th Congressional District in the GOP primary, safest Republican seat in Colorado's congressional delegation. This is the second in our series of interviews with the candidates. Peter Yu, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the invitation, and I'm always glad to be able to talk regarding our race.
So this is your third run for Congress. You recently told Colorado Community Media that you have no desire to serve, but you feel like you should. You ran for the 2nd Congressional District in 2018. You lost by more than 25 points. You ran for the Republican Senate nomination in 2022 and failed to make the ballot. It actually kind of seems like you have a strong desire to serve in Congress, but it's just not been shared by voters in the past. Is that fair to say?
So when you look at what's gone on in my history of running for office, I ran in a race, the 2nd Congressional District. It's one of the most democratic seats in the state. And the purpose of that was to actually be a voice. To actually get my word out and what I feel, and for me to say thank you for the, how blessed I am to be in this country. And it was amazing because we actually made quite a bit of noise in that race. We even had a national forecaster put his reputation on the line saying, Peter is making a lot of attention in this race and will most likely win. And so it was.
You got smoked by 25 points by Joe Neguse.
Well,
in a very heavily Democratic district.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And by all means, it's not. At the end of the day, we couldn't overcome the true demographics of that race. But one people didn't even realize though too is like when you look at that in 2018. The state of Colorado went through a full transformation. We went from having multiple statewide elections or seats that ended up losing that year. We had
Republicans did.
Republicans did,
yeah.
Exactly. It was a full sweep by the Democratic Party in 2018. Mike Kaufman, who had held on to CD6, had a complete switch in regards to where his election went, from actually winning the prior election to even a bigger loss. And so it's one of those things where it was the nature of the state. Not making excuses by any means, but the purpose of that was for me to get out there and basically try to be a voice for what I thought is common sense. In regards to the U.S. Senate race, it was a scenario where, one, we had a lot of people in the race as well. And I took an approach where I thought the momentum I had built from the 2018 race would help me in that race. Unfortunately, we had a field that was very large, and we had some very well-funded people coming in that race, self-funded people in that race. And so it just didn't turn out the way we were hoping for. And so when this race came around, it was a scenario where when I talked to people, when they encouraged me to run, I said, well, I'm going to do this the way I want to do it from my experiences in the past 2 races. And that was 100% about the people. I have not been attending the same meetings that we have always attended as candidates. I mean, for me to just continue to show up at Republican luncheons and breakfasts or Lincoln Day dinners was not my philosophy. My philosophy was it was 100% about the people, to let them know who I was and to hear what their problems were. So that's why over the last 6 months, as you and I discussed a little bit off camera, I mean, I've lost 25 pounds in the last 6 months. I've been out there standing in front of pretty much every King Soopers, Walmart, Ace Hardware, King Soopers, talking to constituents, thousands by the day. I knock on I spend 8 to 10 hours a day knocking on doors, talking to constituents, and that's been my entire campaign plan, this whole go-around. And that's why I'm also proud about this too, because I did not spend a single penny to access the primary ballot. I did not pay a service. I did not, have everyone else do that. I collected 90% of those signatures myself, and that was the connection I want because I wanted people to know I hear what your problems are, I hear what your concerns are, and I want to make sure you have, proper representation if I'm so honored to be your next rep.
Yet the Colorado Republican Party would say that you went about it the wrong way because you gathered petition signatures instead of going to the assembly.
Correct.
And the party has endorsed Congresswoman Lauren Boebert instead, along with a number of allies of the state GOP chair. That's one of the reasons the state GOP chair has been criticized, including using party resources to boost his own congressional campaign and for his recent anti-gay hate. Do you join the other Republicans who are calling for Dave Williams to go?
I am. Yes, I am.
What bothers you most about his conduct?
Well, first of all, his message is not reflective of the Republican Party. It's not reflective of Colorado Republicans. And for him to go out and sit there and try to paint this picture of what our beliefs are or what our message is absolutely incorrect, untrue. And two, for him to actually go out there and endorse candidates prior to a primary is absolutely, in my book, unethical. Because the purpose of the Republican Party, our chair or our counties, is to basically help candidates as whoever steps up to run for office, to help them actually make a difference in their communities and to help them get elected.
want to go back to something you said about the number of doors that you've knocked and people that you've met. I know that you're going to say, I want to win this race. I think I'm going to win this race. But you've talked to a lot of people, maybe more than a lot of the other candidates. Is what you're hearing at odds with the conventional wisdom that this is Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's race to lose and that she's going to run away with it?
Kyle, 100%. And obviously, the constituents I'm talking to, the people that I'm knocking on doors and meeting in front of, Ace Hardwares or whatever else it might be, these are people who don't attend any of these meetings. These are people who don't go to, like I said, the Republican breakfasts, lunches, or any meeting for that matter whatsoever. They don't really follow politics that much. But I've estimated, I've talked to about 35,000, if not more people. And I can't count on one hand how many people said they are voting for Lauren Boebert. And in fact, when I was actually running, part of the reason why I even stayed in this race, despite such a large field, is because I felt this is what the people wanted. They wanted someone that, one, put them first. They actually took the time to stand on their front porch to be able to listen to their concerns, but they also did not want Representative Boebert as their next congresswoman. And so I do see a different angle in regards to what the people are saying. Because when we sit there and look at polling or whatever it might be, these are obviously likely Republicans. These are likely Republicans who most likely show up at meetings as well. But the population I'm talking to, and this is, the district's 750,000 people. And when you look at a district that large, there's a large segment out there that they know what they want. And I don't believe that is Congresswoman Boebert. I'm not here to talk poorly of her by any means, but that's what I'm seeing.
You have not served in elected office like most of the folks who are in this race, but qualifications to serve in Congress can come in all shapes and sizes. What are your qualifications to serve in Congress?
So I believe that I'm actually best suited for this role because of my business background. If you look at my entire life, Kyle, my mom and dad, my 6 brothers and sisters, they came to this country back in 1969. They came here, didn't speak a word of English, didn't have a penny in their name. And then, then they made a mistake and had me. I don't know why you have a 7th child when you're poor, broke, and hungry, but they did. And we grew up in this life of poverty. Doing the worst jobs possible. I remember sleeping on the floor through a good part of my early years. But because of the work ethic we had and because of the opportunities America offers, we were able to have all 7 children become extremely successful. I myself have been able to ascend myself to some of the highest levels of corporate America, some of the largest companies in the world. I was director of marketing for the West Coast for Wyndham Worldwide, the largest hotel chain in the world. And my responsibilities was a performance-based position where I was responsible for handling multi-million-dollar budgets, to be able to run programs over multiple states, to be able to hire large staffs, to be able to identify where we can go and make a strategy before our vice president even sit there and say, before we spend $1. And it was my responsibility to be able to break down that plan, not just understand what the problem is, but to actually look for solutions, but then also being able to implement that. And I think that's the problem we have with Congress. A lot of people sit there and say, well, we know what our problems are, but then they don't know how to basically come up with a solution or be able to implement that. And I think that's something that's really important, because when you look at our current people in Congress, there's a reason why there is a 15% approval rate within Congress, is because we have Congress people who sit there, can only function when they have the majority, or when they sit there and think they're in position to be able to do something. If you can't able to create good legislation when you don't have the majority, well, then you're nothing more than a seat filler. All you are is there to just basically vote in a certain way. But if you can't go into any legislation and be able to set up a plan and who you can talk to, how can you actually reach across the aisle and be able to make a case for why something should be done? If you can't do that, regardless if you have the majority or the minority, well, then that's going to be a big problem. And I think that's where I come in better than anyone else.
But Congresswoman Lauren Boebert has been in the majority. Do you think she's been productive in the majority?
I think her record stands for itself, that she hasn't been productive. And I'm not here to try to criticize her and attack her, but I am not seeing results that are beneficial to the people of CD3 or CD4 at this point in time.
Let's talk about some issues and policies.
Okay.
You support Donald Trump for president. He has a well-documented history of anti-Asian racism, referring to his own cabinet secretary, Elaine Chao, as China-loving and Coco Chow. He mocks Asian accents at campaign events. He called COVID Kung Flu, said that Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin's name sounds Chinese. Why do you respect a man who doesn't respect you?
Because I don't think those are personal attacks. I don't think that's his true nature of who he is. If I look
You
at,
think he's pretending to be racist?
I don't think he's pretending to be racist. I just think he's also making statements that sometimes I don't believe he knows. I think he talks before he thinks. If I look at Donald Trump's history of who he is as a person, I feel he's a very strong humanitarian. I feel like this is a man who's been in favor with a lot of people in the past. Now, his statements that he's made regarding, what he calls the China virus, or, making statements about other people in regards to that, I don't feel like that is a true statement of racism. And I think sometimes we take things, for what it initially is stated. But then if you look at the person who he is really, I do believe he is a good person.
You have a history of defending racists. You said during one of your previous races, this racism thing, it's a lie. Right? That's obviously untrue.
Absolutely.
You said it.
Okay.
You said racism is a lie. Like, we both know that's not true.
Absolutely.
But you said it, and you know who loves when you say that? Racists. They love it. It gives them cover.
Okay. So I appreciate you bringing this to light, because when I gave that speech, it was in one of the worst circumstances that you could possibly give it. It was last second. It was in the parking lot of a motorcycle bar. I had motorcycles going full speed on one side of me. I had a karaoke bar on the other side of me. And my message wasn't completely clear. I was actually screaming at the top of my lungs. And when I did say that, and I've clarified this many, many times forward. In fact, I even did a video in 2018 during my first congressional run that got a lot of playtime.
Could you just clarify it now so that people hear it? What did you mean when you said the racism thing, it's a lie? Could you clarify it now?
So I clarified that, and I basically was talking about in regards to systemic racism. I did not feel that it was at the level that's been portrayed in society. And I was using myself as an example in that as well, because I look at my family. We have seven people who came to this country starting at as far bottom as you possibly can. No advantages, no opportunities. And we have 7 children who all became extremely successful. I look at the rest of society. I look at, Barack Obama. We have an African-American man who ascended to the most powerful position in the world and is beloved worldwide. We look at Oprah Winfrey, another person who came from nothing, is actually became the top of her industry.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why did those anecdotes, your personal success, America's first black president, very successful African-American woman in business, why do the anecdotes outweigh the evidence and the decades of research that show that systemic racism in America, from education to healthcare to housing, is very, very real? And you're saying it's not real.
So, Kyle, when we look at what's going on when we talk about systemic racism, if it does exist, it exists at a level that is not holding people back. Okay, we have to understand something, that if you do want.
What is holding Black Americans back in terms of housing, education, the criminal justice system, if it's not systemic racism? What is holding them back?
What is holding them back?
Yeah.
That's a great question in regards to. I would love to be able to see what their reasoning are as why they aren't able to get ahead as opposed to someone else. And it doesn't matter if it's a black community or an Asian community or any community for that matter, because there are white people in this country who are also living, in poverty as well. It's not a guarantee just because you are white that you have white privilege and you're automatically going to be successful in life.
And that's not what systemic racism means. I'm just curious what you thought was causing the disparities in America that so often fall along racial lines if it's not systemic racism.
Well, and I don't want to stand up here and sound like a broken record like a lot of politicians say they could sit there and say it's part of the nuclear family or the housing or the scenario of single mother homes or whatever else it might be. But I would love to be able to have the opportunity as a representative to be able to go into these communities and be able to have those conversations, because regardless if there is racism or regardless if there's systemic racism, the reality is at the end of the day, we understand that we still got to find a way to get a job. We still got to find a way to put a roof over our head, put food on the table. And I want people to understand this. And part of that message I've been very adamant about, because as I've stated in the past, and I have a video from 2018 that stated racism does exist. I myself has experienced extreme racism in my life. But to sit there and say that it's a blanket of society, I can't accept that. I won't accept that. And even if it was true, for me to actually instill this on our society, to tell someone whether they're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever it may be, to sit there and tell them, guess what? The minute you leave your house, or to let them even put that message in their head that you're 5 steps behind someone else just because of the color of your skin, I don't accept that. I won't accept that, even if it's true, because you still have to basically overcome obstacles. And that's what my message is. My message is about trying to unite us and provide hope. And so it's one of these things where if you are experiencing racism, you know what? The reality of life is this, is that there are people, let's just say they're bad people, that live amongst us. We all know racism is wrong. We all know that murdering someone is wrong. We know that, domestic abuse is wrong, or stealing, or whatever it may be. But we have individuals out there amongst us who do that. And when you do come across them, can you sit there and just say, okay, well, I guess I can't get ahead? Or should we have the different alternative, the choice to sit there and say, you know what? Maybe life is a little bit tougher for me, but doesn't mean I can't be successful. It doesn't mean that I can't get a good job. It doesn't mean that I can be, a contributing part of society. And that's kind of where I'm at. So my mindset as a person is that, whether it's choice or whether it's attitude or if it's mindset, is that we always try to push a mindset that, there is good and there is opportunity, but you know what? It may not always be perfect because life is very hard. And so that's all I'm trying to do.
There seems to be broad consensus among the Republicans in this race that border security and immigration and the economy are key issues. So I want to talk about each of those in turn here. You've talked frequently about your parents' decision to immigrate to the U.S. legally. Donald Trump is calling for an unprecedented deportation of what he says could be upwards of 17 million people from across the United States. City by city, town by town, this would be carried out by local police, by the National Guard, he said maybe even the military. Conservative estimate means that we'd be talking at least 150,000 people rounded up in Colorado. Do you support that?
I do not. Why? I do not. Because there has to be circumstances on what we do in regards to our immigration services. Now, when it comes to deporting people, I do believe there needs to be to a degree. But I think there also has to be a criteria in how we handle that. I think, first of all, we need to look at people, one, are you a violent offender? Are you a dangerous person to society? I think those people automatically should be deported. I think anyone else who has committed multiple crimes, such as drug use or containing a class 1 narcotic. I think those people are obviously showing a history or a pattern that you're not going to be a contributing part of society. I do believe that. I do believe that people who are here right now but don't have a court date inside of a year, I do believe they need to be actually returned to where they are too. Because I believe in having a heart. I believe in being generous in helping other people. But the reality is, Kyle, we have 340 million people in America. There's 4 billion people in this world that are living in poverty right now. And no matter what we want to think, we cannot take care of this monster amount of people who need help. And so we've got to really start sending a message of what is realistic. And people who come here, it's not really a better life for you if you're going to come here and not be able to take part of the opportunities my family had that we got because we came here the right way.
Can I ask you a question about what you just said? You said there are two groups of people that you would support deporting. One group are people who have committed crimes within the United States.
Correct.
And then the other group, through no circumstance of their own, but simply because there's a broken and delayed court system, don't have dates within a year to go before an immigration judge. Why punish those people for the fact that they stepped into a broken system? You know what I mean? Because the other group you're punishing for their actions, but then you're saying deport people because the court system's delayed. How do you square that?
So, the reality is that they did not come here legally. That's the correct way. They did not come here through a port of entry, or they may have come through a port of entry, whatever it might be. But unless you can actually show realistic, credible fear that you do qualify for asylum, we need to make sure that we have to realize what is going on with the situation. Now, if this is someone, and I do apologize for not being completely clear, if someone truly does have a situation where they are in danger, well, then that would be a different scenario. But if someone just simply came over here, said, I can cross, I'm looking for someone, I'm looking for a border patrolman, whatever it may be, or patrol, well, then that's a different story. And 87% of the people that come across this border right now, they're not coming here because they're in dire needs. They're not coming here because they're looking for asylum. They are coming here for work. And there has to be a proper way. We have to draw the line somewhere, Kyle.
Let's clarify that. So folks who have come in, port of entry, come in between ports of entry, they have expressed a credible fear. They're waiting for their day in court to express that.
Yes.
They should be able to stay until they get that day in court, or you think some of them should go?
I think if they can show a credible fear, then they should be allowed absolutely to stay.
They'd have to go before a judge, right, to show that credible fear?
And that's actually one of the things that we need to expedite in our country. That's one of the biggest faults with our country. When we have court dates that are extending out for the 2031, 2032, I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous in regards to how we're handling. We're just basically saying, come on in, you're going to be released in our country for the next 6, 7, 8 years. And by that time, if you have children, they're going to even qualify for DACA or Dreamer status at that point in time. So it doesn't make any sense. We have got to draw a line, because otherwise, if we keep this line of encouragement of people come to America, they're going to come, regardless if they actually qualify for not. And as much as we want people to come here and work, and as much as we want to try to help people, the resources are not available. Denver alone just came out with a report that they're spending up to $340 million to basically take care of 40,000 immigrants that are running around the city of Denver right now.
Some of those folks have stayed, some of those folks have gone on, but it's unquestionable that Denver's spending a lot of money to care for migrants. A last question on the issue of immigration. The idea of a path to legal status or a path to citizenship for folks who did not enter the country legally. Do you think there's any grounds for that, specifically like the DACA kids who are now young adults, so-called dreamers? Should they have a path to legal status, path to citizenship? And then for anybody else, what do you think?
Well, I don't believe in amnesty, but I do believe that for whatever the reasons are, if someone's been here for, let's just say, double-digit years, 10 plus years, and they've proven to be a good citizen, they've proven that they are here not causing trouble, and they actually are having a job, they are actually contributing to society, they actually are paying taxes, I'm open to that idea because they've proven themselves. Now, do I approve of
path to legal status or citizenship?
Legal status.
Legal status, thank you.
Legal status, because if we just sit there and say, guess what, if you can get in here and you're able to stay for 10 years, you're in. And I'm not going to give that message out, because that just encourages more people to try to come here at a mass number that we can't handle.
So the American economy is roaring right now, but you wouldn't necessarily know it because of inflation. So a lot of families are feeling squeezed right now by the economy. What can Congress do to address those inflationary pressures and the cost of living?
I think there's a lot of things. Well, obviously, inflation, in my mind, and I believe that you find a lot of economists who would feel the same way, it's because of spending. Spending is out of control in regards to what we're doing with our society. But we need to make sure, where can we identify how to help people out being able to have a higher cost of living? And I believe that, one, what Congress can do, they can basically help people make more money. Simple as that. And I'm not talking in inflated minimum wage number by simply just saying, well, we're going to start paying people a certain X amount of money. I believe in trying to help people create, a skill set that actually pays you more money. And I do believe that in America, we have a large gap in regards to a lot of our vocational industries, whether it be plumbing, electricians, construction, whatever else it might be. These are jobs that can pay six-figure jobs. And so I believe that what our Congress can do, we can create programs that are high training pay programs that can actually help people achieve these skill sets so they can get these jobs and that they can actually have more money in their bank so they're not living paycheck to paycheck. I believe that would be a large step in regarding to helping out with that situation. Obviously, we can always sit there and say, cutting about spending. At some point in time, the rubber is going to meet the road there, Kyle, because we're coming at a point where Social Security, Medicare are all going to become insolvent here shortly. People, if we don't do anything about it, people are going to start realizing with Social Security that, in 10 years, they're going to get paid only 83% of their full benefits. It's going to happen. So we have to address these situations. So spending is a big part of this. So we need to actually start analyzing what can we do in regards to cutting government spending. And I do believe a lot of the government agencies can be in line for minimal reductions over time. So that will help us in regard to spending, which will obviously help with inflation.
Including so-called entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicaid. You'd be open to cuts there?
I am not at this point in time. But because here's what I believe in: looking outside the box. And I'm not saying that my mindset is 100% accurate or true, but I do want to look at all options that we need to do in regards to Social Security. I mean, we look at, if you look back to 2005, when President George Bush looked at saying that let's have a small segment, not all of Social Security, privatized, where we can actually invest it. That would have been a monster success story, because you look at where the stock market was back in 2005. I think it was like 17,000. Today, the Dow Jones is knocking on 40,000. It would be a great option to basically supplement our shortcoming in Social Security. In fact, we wouldn't even have a shortfall if we had done that. I mean, you look at Sweden. Sweden is a country that has done that. And like I said, this is a teeny part, so there is no risk to the Social Security account. But whether it's right or wrong, this is something that has to be evaluated, because, like I said, in 10 years, the problem is real, and we have to address that.
So you mentioned the idea of partial privatization. We just want to get you quickly on two other things related to Social Security. Open to means testing for Social Security?
Voluntarily.
Okay. And raising the retirement age?
For people at a certain age, I believe we're at that point, because...
Meaning telling younger people
and
your age.
And I'm including myself as well. Not that I'm that young, but I am saying that I would include myself in that. I'm not going to tell someone to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And
how much runway should somebody get before their Social Security retirement age moves on them? 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? What's a fair notice that number is going to move on you?
And I'm sorry.
In terms of telling somebody 40 and under, your retirement age moves. Or if you're 50 and under, your retirement age moves. What's a fair warning?
Well, so I'm actually above 50 right now, but I would say there and say 50 is where the number needs to start beginning, because at this point in time, the reality is, and I mean, I know no one wants to acknowledge it, but our life expectancy has increased much higher than when Social Security was created. And so there just has to be adjustments made in regard to that. When we talk about means testing, I think someone who actually doesn't need Social Security, they should be able to sit there and say, you know what, I'm volunteering not to take this money. But yet, I'm not here to tell anyone who's actually paid into a system that you can't have your money back. And that's where we need to just understand that at some point in time, it's the consequences are going to be reality regardless if we do something or not.
I have one last question that I may regret asking. There was a random reference at the end of our debate the other night between you and Congresswoman Boebert as to whether we are or are not currently in an ice age. And this appeared to be a continuation of a conversation that you all had elsewhere that I didn't hear. Can you explain that to me?
Kyle, this is actually hilarious that this has actually got the airtime that it's gotten. So we were talking about climate. Actually, it was in with Sean Boyd over at CBS.
This is another TV channel's debate. You were talking about climate
correct,
change.
Yes.
Okay, yep,
and
go.
we're talking about climate change.
Yep.
And I'm explaining climate because I do have a lot of experience in renewable energies as well as the climate. And I made a reference that right now, we are scientifically in an ice age right now. And people don't believe me, you can actually Google it and do a research. You're not going to find anyone arguing the fact that ice ages last millions of years. In fact, this current one has lasted for 3 million years, and that we are today still in an ice age. It may not be the ice age that you see, the movie where there's a squirrel chasing a nut or an acorn all around the place, and I hope no one's getting their information from that location by any means, but we are scientifically in an ice age right now. And so I made a simple reference. I think,
Let me ask you a more pertinent question. What is the role that humans are playing in a warming world?
Obviously, there's 8 billion people in the world right now. We're going to be at 10 billion people by the year 2050. We are obviously contributing to the levels of CO2 in our country. So exactly to what level that is, I don't have the answer for that. But obviously with that kind of a population, with us using and requiring energy, of course there is an effect with what humans are contributing, absolutely.
Do you believe that climate change could pose an existential threat to humans in the relatively near future?
Not in the near future, I don't.
So should we be taking significant steps to fend off climate change or to attempt
I think
to
we should
mitigate
be looking at every single option when it comes to energy. Because right now, we really don't have enough energy in the world. By the year 2050, our energy demands of this world are going up by 50%. 50% higher than what we are today. So to sit there and think that we have all the answers, that we have enough fuel to handle that, is just absolutely untrue. As someone who actually has spent many years working in the solar renewable industry, I support all energy sources. But the reality is, solar and wind right now are only 6% of our energy nationwide. So to sit there and think we're going to go from 6% on a source that is intermittent, can't store it, to sit there and think we're going to go from no fossil fuels, no natural gas, to anything else, that's not even realistic whatsoever.
When you say all energy sources, do you truly mean all? I mean, Colorado's been scaling down its coal production and its coal burning. Would you like to see that ramp back up in Colorado?
No, we don't need to do that. We can also
you don't think we need coal?
We don't need to up our coal because we have plenty of natural gas. Natural gas burns cleaner by 30% over coal. In fact, that's the main reason why the United States leads the world in regard to CO2 reduction, is because of natural gas. It's not because of solar and wind, it's because of natural gas.
Peter, we've covered a lot of ground. We could do this for much longer. I appreciate your time and your willingness to come in and take questions.
Well, I appreciate everything you're doing, Kyle. I appreciate you always taking the time to talk to all candidates, Republican or Democrat, to actually get the information out there. And I hope that, in this race, and we've spoke about this in the past, well, not in the past, but based on the debate, this is the most Republican seat in the District of Colorado right now. And most likely, whether that's actually true or not, we'll see what happens when the results come in. But whoever wins this primary most likely will be the next representative of the 4th Congressional District. And I mean, obviously, I have no idea where this thing is going to be going. I feel very strong about our chances just because of my personal efforts of going out and meeting the public directly. But I also know, too, that in a recent poll, I was tracking up you take polls for what they are, a grain of salt. Whether you believe them or not, I've moved up to the point where right now I'm only behind Lauren Boebert. Like I said, very small
I
margin.
think you were behind by 35 points, but why ruin a great conversation with that fact?
Exactly. Well, and that's what I said. It's one of those things. Where are we going to see? I believe that we're tracking the right way, and I'm going to work as hard as possible until June 25th. And you know what? To be the best representative, where at the end of the day, people can sit there and say, I'm proud of Peter Yu being my representative, and that's how a representative should serve.
Peter Yu, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.